Hello and welcome, I'm Riz Khan. When the great writer and critic Gore Vidal says, take a look at someone's work and compliments it, you can be sure it is worth a look at. In the case of Italo Calvino, the Cuban-born writer who died in 1985 at the age of 61, there is a body of work which Mr. Vidal feels hasn't been fully appreciated. As the anniversary of that death approaches, I had a chance to speak with Gore Vidal about the work of Calvino, and this is what he had to say. Mr. Vidal, you're a huge fan of Italo Calvino, and I know you're known for being a critic, but you're also a champion of unsung heroes. What was it about Italo Calvino that made him so special as a writer?
Well, I studied the landscape of literature all my life, and he was the only great writer of my time. What
was it about? It's a big statement. What was it about that, his writing?
Well, answer, read him. That's one way of getting at the mystery, but there he was. There was no one like him. Now, you could say a lot of it could be disdain that I have for most of the American writers, and a great many of the French and Italians. You know, we don't live in a great society of any kind. But Calvino was a one-man great society. I remember when I first heard about him, he'd written a short story that took the literary world by storm. It was The Ants. I forget the exact title, but Ants was in it. And it's about a village somewhere in southern Italy, or even Latin America. And it was really about people were looking for real estate. You know, the world was looking rather disagreeable, as usual. Things were going wrong. And suddenly, this perfect town, everybody has their eye on it, wonderful houses, very cheap. I mean, everybody's there.
Why do you think he failed to get the recognition that you feel he deserved?
Well, look at the ones who get it. Do you think Ernest Hemingway deserves anything other than our tears for having been such a fool? I mean, Hemingway was a hopeless writer, but who would care? Because you had to know about writing before you could judge Hemingway, wouldn't you? That's the problem. Calvino was there. Everybody who knew of him admired him, read him, wrote about him.
Interestingly enough, in spite of his South American roots, he actually wrote in French, though, didn't he?
When he wanted to. He spent most of his life working in France, because there it was. He certainly wasn't going to go back to Cuba because there were all the political problems, which didn't interest him at all. He was one of the few Latin writers who was not at all political. So he wasn't looking for paradise on the islands or anywhere else.
Specifically, what was it about his writing that you think made him so special? I mean, he was a Cuban-born writer.
Well, let's use a word that is often misused, universal. Where Calvino was, there was literature, like it or not. Where the dum-dums were there, and I include everyone from Faulkner to Hemingway and so on, these are really, for the most part, these are people who are show-offs. They know nothing of literature. They know how to grab attention. They're publicists. They should be selling automobiles at the corner.
Writing in French, though, of course, you know, it's different from writing in, say, Italian or Spanish or any other language. Each language has its own kind of sentiments, its own kind of quirky character. And I wonder how his work, when he wrote in French, might have been shaped by that language.
Of course it was. And he shaped their language. French are very proud of their language, as well they should be. But Italo was bigger than France. And as the years passed, it became very clear that he was the master. Everyone had been waiting for a great master who would take the place of X and Y and Z and Homer and Flaubert, the Iliad, the Odyssey. I mean, he was worth all the lot, finally. And this sort of burning genius sitting there on the edge of the world, which I think of as Paris, well, France of the Pyrenees. I always think of more evenly divided on that mountain, because that mountain was the division of his psyche.
You attended his funeral in 1985. What went through your mind when you were there?
Oh, God. When will there be another? With Italo, I thought literature had died. It doesn't seem to have, but it doesn't seem to be doing very well anyway. He was it, and I did my best to launch him in the American and English worlds and languages. Boy, that was impossible. I talk my British friends, many of whom are Italophiles, and they go to Italy. They know their way around. They're not idiots, but they had a big, I don't know, penman's dinner for Calvino. This was a couple of years before he died. He went there in good faith, and there's a big table, and all the bad writers in England were assembled there to pay homage to him. His wife and I were waiting for him to come back. She had not been invited, which he didn't appreciate. When he came back, he said, why'd you leave so soon? I mean, the dinner was over that soon? He said, well, the dinner wasn't. They were still eating, I think, when I left. I said, well, what went wrong? He said, you know, not one person addressed a word to me. Well, I don't think they spoke Italian. Well, why have people there who don't speak Italian? I speak Italian. That's what I'm there for. I can help them with their Italian if they want to be helped.
In terms of his character, what endeared him to you so much? What was it about his character?
Truth.
Consistently?
I don't think anyone's consistent, but he certainly was it. He wasn't selling a bill of goods. Now, we have Norman Mailer here. We have Hemingway there. Me man, me man. Ooh. These are two fat little girls who really should be in the typist pool somewhere. I'm just changing their sex for them because I think they'd be happier. And they are more like rather vain girls.
In terms of his character, though, to what degree did he regard what he did as a mission, perhaps a passion, perhaps a duty? Did he regard his work in a certain way from what you know?
If he was sitting here and you asked him that question, he said, my mission is of another world. That sounds like Jesus Christ. I just added that for him. Just so Americans who really like our Lord Jesus will realize what a good man he was. But he knew perfectly well what the game was like and what it was all about. He'd got the most treasured treasure that Harvard can give, which was something or other lectures, and they give it to a great man of letters once a year. He got it. He went up there, 14 lectures, I think it was. Writing them, he had his fatal heart attack, stroke, rather, and collapsed in Siena, put in the hospital, got sicker and sicker. I was in Rome, and I went up to see the widow, or soon-to-be widow, and to see Italo. And suddenly the streets were dark. There were these huge Calvino è morto.
He was only 61.
Only 61, and it was as if a great prince had died. The whole nation went into mourning. The President of the Republic sent a plane up to collect him and his wife and daughter and so on, to bring them back to Rome. Don't know if they wanted to go there, but that's where they went. And I thought, what American or Brit or Frenchman could have that audience in his own country today. And Italo was a Francophile. I must say, he was no one who condescended to the French. He owed a lot to France and to its literature.
Now, of course, sometimes it takes time for someone's, true genius, their ability, their contribution to be fully recognized. It being only, 16 or so years since he passed away. Do you think that he will be remembered differently, perhaps over time, as his work maybe goes a little broader, wider out to the public?
Well, the people who will be forgotten will be one by one every living writer today. Most of them are no good. Most of them are sort of sellouts, trashy, or just clumsy. He was it. He was the real thing. Now, you have to have an ear for it. You have to have a taste for it. You can't just wander around and say, oh, that looks like a great writer. Let's go over there and see what he has to say. He wasn't that at all. He would just simply say, I'll tell you what he got from his parents, who were scientists, particularly in the field of agriculture. What Italo did, he looked at everything carefully. He'd say, well, I see your banana tree isn't doing terribly well. Did it ever occur to you that shade was too much for it? He was always scientific. He's always figuring out why things worked or why they didn't work. He was not mean. He was very charming, witty. Sometimes you realize that you had a knife in you when he finished straightening you out about something that you had got wrong, particularly his work. That annoys all writers. That annoyed him a bit, but he wasn't vain. He didn't go around thinking, oh my God, what a great man dies in me. Every American is doing that. Most of us wish they all would die, but go away.
Well, Gore Vidal, great to hear your reflections on Italo Calvino. Thank you.